With Abdul Carter headed off to the NFL, Penn State's defense needed a superstar caliber player to anchor them for the 2025 season, and that's what Zane Durant's going to do as he announced his return to the team.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I am your host of the show. Thank you so much for joining this live episode. So, since it is a live show, you are part of this conversation in real time as well. Let me know your thoughts, your comments, questions, reactions. Talking about Zane Durant first, I like the way that it's starting to come together for Penn State's defense. Zane Durant is somebody that can anchor this defense, but what is Dennis-Sutton doing? If we have time for it, we can talk about Kobe King as well, but I really do want to focus on the defensive line because Zane Durant coming back, you have Abdul Carter leaving, and Dennis-Sutton still has yet to make a decision. Anaya White comes in, Jalen Harvey, Max Granville, right? There are a lot of names that are going to shuffle here through the defensive line. And Alonzo Ford is set to return as well. So let's talk about Zane Durant and his impact first. Durant is a superstar caliber player, and especially returning for his senior season. It didn't always show up in the box score because defensive tackles don't routinely do that. Defensive tackles are blockers essentially for the defensive ends, the linebackers, because they make a lot of the plays. They are the playmakers, and the defensive tackles do a lot of the ugly work. But Zane Durant does both. He is able to make plays, disrupt plays, take on the double teams, while and at the same time, not only disrupting it, but making the tackle too. And Durant is somebody that is extremely underrated. Right out of the gate was one of Penn State's best defenders per Pro Football Focus, and certainly when Abdul Carter emerged, it certainly started to reshuffle, and Dennis-Sutton got better as the season progressed as well. But Zane Durant is a player that just disrupts the line of scrimmage. Double teams, can get after the quarterback, so he's not just a 2-down defensive tackle. He can play all 3 downs. And I like this a lot. I like Zane Durant's personality. I like his energy. I like his ability. I mean, maybe this is somebody that factors into a captain role for this upcoming season. I won't go that far necessarily, but he is a player returning for his 4th season. He certainly should be in consideration, and I wonder if the team does vote for him to be one of those defensive captains. So Durant coming back gives you that superstar caliber player with Abdul Carter going off to the NFL. Now, I'm not saying that Zane Durant is a future top 10, top 5 pick, but Zane Durant kind of has a similar parallel to Tyler Warren in the fact that if you go into the draft today, you could be with a solid combine, pro day, a 4th, 5th round pick. Do you want to take that chance, or do you want to come back for your senior season? Do you want to come back for your final year of eligibility like a Tyler Warren did? I know it's offense to defense, right? But Durant can certainly, with an incredible season, boost his draft stock to where you're not a fringe. You might be a day 2 pick if everything goes well. You're probably a day 3 pick because of all the potential that you have. But why not prove it again with another season of work in college and potentially be a surefire 2nd round pick, maybe even a 1st round pick. So I see the parallel here in terms of development for Tyler Warren to Zane Durant. I know that's offense to defense, but that's how I see it. Because Tyler Warren was in the similar situation. Could have been a 4th, 5th, maybe a 6th round pick if he went in last year's NFL draft. Now he's in discussions for being a 1st round pick. Definitely no later than the 2nd round. I think he's a surefire 1st round pick at this point in time with 7th in the Heisman voting, right? But that's what Zane Durant can be for Penn State's defense, is be a 2nd, 1st round type of talent and be the face of the defense. He can anchor the defense. And especially with defensive tackle for Penn State, it is in flux because they are losing Devon J. Thomas. They're losing Keziah Izzard. And then if we branch out, Abdul Carter's already declared for the NFL draft. Dennis-Sutton still has to make a decision. Amin Vanover, Smith-Vilbert, you have a lot of unknown at defensive line. And that's what Zane Durant gives you. He gives you consistency. He gives you talent. He gives you a foundation. You know what you're working with. It's one thing to go get a defensive tackle out of the transfer portal and almost take a little bit of a gamble because this isn't somebody that has been with the program for a long time. Zane Durant knows the operation. He knows Tom Allen's defense. He knows Penn State and how they operate as a football program. James Franklin, familiar with him, vice versa. So this is bigger than just that. Zane Durant gives you all of that and more. Leadership, playmaking ability, another example of what the success path looks like. A path of success will look like if you bypass, short-term success or short-term immediate goals where, I want to go to the NFL under any circumstances. Okay, well, you might get selected in the 5th or 6th round. Whereas if you return, you really help yourself out. And Zane Durant, I do think, has, I won't call him a first or second team All-America instant consideration because I think people overlook him. But I think he has that kind of talent. I think he has first team All-Conference for the Big Ten next season. He should be one of the favorites to be named to the first team All-Big Ten Conference team and will get at least All-America recognition in the process because that's just how good he is. But now you don't have to force, now Penn State doesn't have to force anybody that's not ready to play. Alonzo Ford is set to come back. He's got to deal with a long-term injury though. I'd be surprised if he plays in the spring football season. This is going to be something that he's going to have to recover from. But that gives you a 1-2 punch as your starter. Zane Durant and Alonzo Ford. That is the best case scenario for Penn State at this point in time at defensive tackle. Then, Caleb Artis, Ty Blanding, Xavier Gilliam. Don't forget about Liam Andrews. I think Penn State needs that breakout star, but you at least have consistency. You have a face of the defense. Because Abdul Carter gave you that superstar ability. But now Zane Durant, with what he was able to do and accomplish in his junior season, imagine that now in his senior year, taking that step forward. He already had an impact. I mean, he took Notre Dame, one of Notre Dame's best defensive linemen. And it stinks talking about this because it was a loss. And, there's not a lot of moral victories. I think there are such things as moral victories. But specific plays, Zane Durant took Notre Dame, arguably the best overall offensive lineman in Rocco Spindler, and pushed him right back into the quarterback. And just that's what he can do. Shed the double team and take a guard that is 30 pounds heavier than him. Zane Durant plays at give or take 290, and Rocco Spindler weighs 325, and he just bull rushed him back into the pocket. That's what Zane Durant can do now. And imagine with another winter workouts, spring football, summer, his senior season is going to be something special. He can be the face of this defense. We'll talk about Dennis-Sutton, but more importantly, I see that your comments are coming into the chat. So we're going to get your thoughts on the defense, answer any questions. Penn State has been very active to this point in time with how it's done in the transfer portal and getting key players to return, Zach Wheatley and Zane Durant. It's all coming together. The dominoes are falling in the right direction for Penn State's defense, and we'll talk about it more on the other side of this break. And today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. This message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Are you tired of endless waiting, wondering, worrying about your taxes? Well, now that is a thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention. Well, you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. Then you won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Are you ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off of your plate so you can focus on the rest of your day. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at turbotax.com/guarantees. And thank you for joining this live show and spending your Saturday afternoon for me, right? Bit of good news between offensive line commitment out of the portal yesterday. Great for the offensive line depth. Phil Troutwine is on an absolute heater over these past few seasons. And honestly, Penn State's offensive line might be I know that's something that's been said over the past, hey, this is the best version of Penn State's offensive line. No, this is the best version of Penn State's offensive line. But truly it is, with Sal Wormley being the only one going on. But I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's important to talk about given the recent news. Yes, Zane Durant is back. We are going to be incredible next year. It's a start. It's a start because Dennis-Sutton is a 50-50. We don't know right now. Is he coming back? Is Kobe King coming back? You just need those confirmations. So until Penn State checks off a lot of these other boxes, that's when I can start to say, okay, hey, now they're probably in the similar situation where they can contend and be a team that is seriously one of the top 5 teams in the country. This is what Ohio State did. This is what Michigan did in 2023. Aside from the Connor Stallion stuff, I'm talking about the build of the roster. Okay, when I bring up Michigan, it is solely from the fact that that was a deep team and they convinced the veteran players that could have gone off to the NFL to return. Michigan did it. Ohio State did it, and now Penn State is in the process of trying to do it. Because Zach Wheatley could have declared for the NFL draft, like KJ Winston. Both of those guys, KJ Winston's going on, and that stings. You would like him back. But Zach Wheatley could have gone on. Zane Durant could have easily gone on. But now these guys are looking around that. They have unfinished business. We can also benefit in the process by boosting our draft stock the way that Tyler Warren did. The way that, Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, those seniors, right? That's the example. Those guys that are following that trajectory where, yes, you could have gone earlier into the draft, but you wouldn't have been selected as high. And Zane Durant is now kind of following that trajectory. We will blow it again. The defeatist mentality. This is all optimistic. This is all positive. If Zane Durant was leaving for the NFL, we'd be having a very different conversation. Remember how Franklin always used to say, guys all think that they are Aaron Donald. I think he stopped saying that because he realized Zane Durant was becoming exactly that. Zane Durant's similar. He's similar because Aaron Donald's same kind of build where he's just this overly athletic. When you look at Zane Durant, per the eye test, you're not if he's just standing there as an offensive lineman. If you know Zane Durant, you're going to take him seriously. But if you're just saying, who's this guy? He's barely 6 foot. He's 285, 290 pounds. We should be able, as a 320-pound offensive guard or a center, be able to just man him off the line of scrimmage. And you're going to find out real quickly that Zane Durant is every bit of 290 pounds and then some. He is as athletic as he gets. He is as strong as it gets. He's one of the smartest football players. Like he understands. I will say one weakness about Zane Durant. He was not one of the best tacklers for Penn State this past season. And that's backed up by Pro Football Focus. His tackling rating was pretty low. So that is something that he definitely needs to work on, but he is so disruptive. He needs to finish plays more often than not. I feel like at times he would over pursue. He'd try to arm tackle, and that rating might be slightly skewed because he's got the attention of the center and the guard or a lead blocker, whatever have you. Zane Durant commands a lot of attention, and he's still making plays and he's disruptive in the process. So, yes, he has traits of Aaron Donald. I can't sit here and say that, he's the next Aaron Donald or this player's, because Aaron Donald is one of a kind. But Zane Durant has traits, has elements that made Aaron Donald very good at the next level. Denying Dennis-Sutton next, please. Well, we'll talk about more about denying Dennis-Sutton and the state of the defensive end, especially with Abdul Carter going off to the NFL in the upcoming segment. If Dennis-Sutton, Singleton, Katron, etc. come back, will we be as good as this year? Figured it's about the same team with more development. We've lost our 2 elite players in Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren. I mean, we're kind of all on the same page here. That's an excellent assessment that you lose Tyler Warren, you lose Abdul Carter. Those were the faces of this team, where you had an elite playmaker on offense, you had an elite playmaker on defense. And those guys were able to carry an offensive group, especially because Tyler Warren, right, he made up for 90% of the passing game. We know that, especially now, recency bias, but the wide receivers just did not do enough as they could have, as they should have. But Tyler Warren was a superstar. Where is that production going to come from? And another year of Nicholas Singleton, right? These guys don't get worse. They get better. The more practices you go through, the more workouts you go through, the more film studies you go through, Drew Allar is only going to get better. Nicholas Singleton would only hypothetically get better. Same thing with Katron Allen. All of these guys are going to come back. These guys do this daily, every second of every hour. This is what they eat, sleep, and breathe if they are truly committed to the grind. And that's why you're seeing this kind of progression. So if Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen were as good as they were as true juniors, imagine what they would be as true seniors, where they can really advance their games. I don't look at running backs as solely in this day and age of football, with the modernization of football. Singleton maybe takes that step as another receiver, right? If you can get both of them back, speaking specifically to Singleton and Allen, I don't know how that's going to work, because those guys, as running back's a completely different position. You don't want to put too much tread on the tires, and they do have an opportunity to be selected in the upcoming, especially Katron Allen. Katron Allen really helped himself out down the stretch here. He went from probably someone that was undrafted to seriously being considered as a day 3 NFL draft prospect. That's how I look at it. I think Nicholas Singleton is a 2nd or 3rd round pick, but there's a lot of good running backs going into this draft. It makes sense for them to come back. It also makes sense for them to go off to the NFL. But Singleton can develop as a pass catcher, and you get Cam Wallace healthy. You get Quentin Martin and Corey Smith adjusted as 2nd-year running backs. You could start to use Singleton in a variety of different ways. It doesn't have to be just that outside zone rusher. You could motion him out to the slot, right? Andy Kotelnicki can do a lot of things. So that's the benefit of getting Zane Durant back, is that you're getting a better version of Zane Durant. If he already had this kind of production in this season, imagine what he can do in year 4. Same thing with Singleton and Allen, but we'll see. I hope they can come back, right? Jalen Harvey. Yes, I'll save my thoughts for defensive end in the upcoming segment. But Jalen Harvey has a lot of potential. Max Granville has a lot of potential. Do you think the 2 running backs come back next year too? As far as what I've heard, or as far as the rumors that are going around, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, it's really tough to say. I would say it's a 50-50 decision. My expectation is that Singleton does come back and Allen goes. Just based on it's really based on the rumors and chatter, but that's no, hey, the coaching staff said this, or this player indicated this. It's really just kind of the media chatter that, okay, and Pat McAfee said that, oh, Singleton and Allen should be expected to return. You now have competitive NIL to where you can get your best players to return. You don't have to go chasing anybody down in the transfer portal. You can keep your star players. Ohio State did that this season. Michigan did it in 2023. So why can't Penn State do that itself? But that running back room is fairly crowded. And Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton have proved a lot to this point. It would be nice to get them. I mean, they got Drew Allar to come back, right? If without NIL, Allar would be in the draft. Singleton and Allen would be in the Allar, Singleton and Allen, Dennis-Sutton, in addition to Abdul Carter and KJ Winston. NIL allows that flexibility to say, you know what, I can take a risk here and come back and build for my future. A lot of these guys will go off to the NFL if NIL did not exist. Read the New York Times has Allar going top 10 in the draft to the Raiders. Maybe off topic, but that would put Penn State in a bind. Could Bo? I'm just not. I think that's a typo there, but I get your point. I don't think Drew Allar is going into the NFL draft. It seems because he has the chance. And I know this might not be the best timing because of a really bad game. And Drew Allar played a bad game. Drew Allar played a bad game. That is not an indication of what he is as a quarterback. That was an indication of that moment. Because if you, and we'll take a break here in just a moment. I'll finish with Drew Allar, and then we'll talk about defensive end, Dennis-Sutton, and the defensive ends as it is, because I like the way that it's setting up so far. And I see your follow-up comment here. Okay, could Bo transfer back? So Bo could transfer back if hypothetically in the spring transfer portal window. That would be a little complicated, but if it happens, he wouldn't transfer back unless there's an opportunity to start. I think Drew Allar's going to stay. I think Drew Allar's a man of his word. Allar already said he was one of the first people to say, I'm coming back for the 2025 season. I mean, that gives you a lot. That is a third-year starting quarterback. That is a fourth-year player. Allar has all the tools to be a good NFL quarterback. He has and which was so surprising because it was such a total combustion. It was a breakdown against Notre Dame, and I guess that's what top 5 defenses will do to you. But we know that Drew Allar can make all of those throws, and he was missing the simple ones. He was missing the easy ones. These were wide open players, not throwing into double, triple coverage in tight windows where he had a split second to make. It was the worst game that Drew Allar could have had, but that's not an indication that, oh, Drew Allar is this horrible quarterback. The country, the media, collectively are going to say that now because, oh, we saw it. But that's Penn State football fans and Penn State football spectators that actually watched all 12 games and then the postseason know that Drew Allar is not a bad quarterback. He had a bad game. In the moment, yes, it stings because it was the national semifinal. You are allowed to have a bad game and still be a quality player. But, I mean, that's what makes or breaks the best of the best, right? You need to be able to show up in those moments, and Drew Allar did not. But that I never said once in my post-game reaction and then my follow-up to it that Drew Allar's terrible, that he has no chance to succeed. It is a good thing that Allar is coming back for his senior season, for not only him, but for the Penn State team. You get a third-year starting quarterback. That is very hard to come by with all the transfer portal, all the rotation. You get some consistency. You get year 2 of him and Andy Kotelnicki. And I think Allar's going to learn from this. I don't think that game's going to break him. I think that's going to make him. Because we saw Allar take a step in terms of, being a composed quarterback. We saw him because 2023, it was a struggle. 24, it was better. Well, now you really had that baptism by fire. And I think it will only set him up for more success in 2025. But that's why Allar is coming back, not to be a fringe first or second round QB, to be the first player selected in 2026. That is better for him than trying to make his name and battle his way through in the 2025 NFL draft. So I appreciate the comments, the questions. We'll get back to them to end and wrap up the show. But I want to talk about Dennis-Sutton. Will he come back? What is the confidence level, and what does that do for Penn State's defense if and when he does? We'll talk about that on the other side of this break. And today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and you will get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is right. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And if you look over at FanDuel, no, Penn State's not in the national championship, unfortunately, but FanDuel has the lines posted for Ohio State and Notre Dame in the national championship game, as well as the NFL playoffs, right? And that's the place to be for the NFL playoffs. So you can see all the lines for a wild card round, as well as the national championship game in college football. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you will get started with $200 in bonus bets. Again, that is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, so the next domino here. Okay, so how does this streak of news go from good to great? You get denied Dennis-Sutton back. Zane Durant. Okay, so Abdul Carter goes off. He was that superstar caliber player. Well, Zane Durant can fill that void, and so would deny Dennis-Sutton. and you're really getting a 1-2 punch on the defensive line. I like the way that Penn State has offset, the natural attrition of all of this. Abdul Carter's honestly been one of my favorite players to watch over the past few seasons. His versatility, playmaking ability, his toughness, he did not have to do that. He could have opted out of the national semifinal and said, I'm going to be a top 10 pick. I'll protect my health. But no, he was a true team player and just set the standard of what it means to wear that number 11. Dennis-Sutton coming back gives you another superstar caliber playmaker in addition to Zane Durant. So that's one. But why not have not just one, but two at the same time? Both of them came up through the same class of 2022. I think Dennis-Sutton could be a top first-round pick, be one of the top defensive ends in the 2026 NFL draft. But what makes this decision now more complicated is because of the run he went on to finish the season. Got banged up against Wisconsin, had to work through the groin injury, and then once he was 100% again, Zane Durant became that complimentary superstar. Yes, and I'm not trying to use superstar lightly. I do genuinely mean that. Look at that interception he had dropping into coverage. How many players can do that? Rush after the quarterback, but then be so dynamic that as a true pass rusher, as a true strong side defensive end, to be able to drop back into zone and then make a read on the quarterback and then leap sky high to where he can't throw it over you and make a two-handed interception and come down with it. Most players just drop that. And instead, Dennis-Sutton makes that kind of play. So Penn State, yes, it would benefit Penn State immensely. So then you have Dennis-Sutton, you have Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford when he comes back, and then you get Anai White from the transfer portal, and look what Penn State has done with reclamation projects of players that didn't work out at another institution and ended up becoming super. Deion Barnes is one of the best defensive line coaches in the country, and he's proven that in such a short time. Abdul Carter was a linebacker, went to defensive end for 1 year, and became probably a top 5 pick in this upcoming NFL draft. Chop Robinson struggled at Maryland, needed some guidance, became a surefire first-round pick under the tutelage of Deion Barnes. Well, Anai White, if everything goes well, can be that next player to do just that. Amin Vanover's leaving, Smith Vilbert's leaving because they're out of eligibility. But I really like where the defensive line is right now, especially at defensive end. It was going to be concerning. You still want to get Dennis-Sutton back. That is a need. That is not a want. That is a need if you want to be a national title contender in 2025. Dennis-Sutton, Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford, and then Anai White, and see how much better is Max Granville going to be. Max Granville became a third down pass rushing specialist behind Abdul Carter. That shows you how much they trust somebody that was supposed to be a high school senior. And they said, you're going to back up Abdul Carter on obvious third down pass rushing situations. Max Granville could contend for at least more playing time. He'll certainly be someone that rotates in frequently. Don't forget about Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams, Zariah Fisher should come back. Unfortunately missed the entirety of this season due to injury. But I really like that defensive end group, especially if Dennis-Sutton comes back. If he happens to go off to the NFL, I don't blame him because he did have a fantastic finish to the season against SMU, against Boise State, and against Notre Dame, against some of the best of the best. This wasn't, he proved something against Purdue. He proved something against Maryland. No, he went on this run in the postseason and showed his potential with the way that him playing at 6'6", 260 pounds, an NFL team might consider him on potential alone to be a first-round pick in this year's NFL draft. I think it's safe to say that he's a second-round or a third-round pick, conservatively. So I don't blame Dennis-Sutton if he goes off to the NFL. At least here's the positive intel. Dennis-Sutton is leaning towards coming back, but he's going to have those conversations. He's going to talk to scouts. He's probably going to talk to agents what his best avenue is. I think Dennis-Sutton should push off the short term and go for the long term and boost his draft stock. Instead of being, maybe you're a second round, third round pick, be one of the first defensive ends taken in 2026 by coming back for your senior season, because that's the potential that that Dennis-Sutton has. But I don't blame him I don't blame him because he definitely boosted his stock for the 2025 NFL draft. But Penn State certainly has offset those losses by getting an Anai White. Max Granville is progressing very well. So is Jalen Harvey. Zariah Fisher should come back and at least, when he wasn't injured, was pretty serviceable as a rotational defensive end. I'm not saying that he can be a clear-cut starter. There is going to be a battle there between Max Granville and Anai White at that defensive end spot. But Dennis-Sutton, of course, gives you a lot of the similar things that Zane Durant will. We'll see what the pitch is from James Franklin and Penn State. Can they convince him to pass up the short term to reap the benefits of the long term? He could be one of the first, if not the first, defensive end taken in the 2026 NFL draft if everything goes well. We'll finish up the show going back to the comments section and allow me to find my spot to pick back up. Doesn't matter. Going to lose next year just like we did this year. Nothing ever changes. How can you say that? How can you say that with what they are returning and then they got to the top four. They got to the semifinal. That's the furthest that Penn State has gotten. And you're getting Andy Kotelnicki back. You're getting Tom Allen back. There's not this rotation of coordinators like there always are. Assistant coaches have stayed put. J1 Sider didn't go anywhere. Phil Troutwine didn't go anywhere. Jury's still out on Marcus Hagans. We can talk about that in other conversations. But all of the prime position coaches, Ty Howell, you have a lot of consistency in Penn State's coaching staff for the better of it all. Nice. Now we got to get denied Dennis-Sutton to stay. Exactly. Something has to change. What change do you want to see? Because Penn State is at least incrementally moving in the right direction. Am I the only one who sees this was James's second season coaching without an arm and a leg tied behind his back because of the additions of Pat Kraft and Neely Bendapudi? That's why James Franklin emphasizes alignment. I'm glad other people see it too. Because at Texas A&M, Texas, I won't say Florida because the investors and everybody tried to buy out Billy Napier. But when Ohio State, they all row the boat in the same direction. And to an extent, Penn State still does not have that. The alumni base, the donor base is still split on James Franklin and the Penn State football program as a whole. If everybody rows the boat in the same direction, and because this is where we are, I don't like the fact that it's basically a bidding war to see who can spend the most money to build a roster, but that's what it takes in this age of college football. Ohio State spent a rumored $22 million, at least $20 million. Penn State, give or take 10, 11, 12. And there are reports that say that was the case for 2024. You can do a lot with $10 extra million in the bank. Imagine if Penn State had $20 million to work with for a football team, for NIL, to go after, to construct the best roster possible. James Franklin doesn't have that presently, but Ohio State does. And that's why Ohio State is in the national championship. And Penn State got close. People argue, well, they still lost. That doesn't matter. Penn State was one play away from making the national championship game. They didn't lose by 2 touchdowns to Notre Dame. They could have went to overtime. The game solely was not on coaching like it had been in the past. So I like the point that is brought up that James Franklin isn't coaching with one arm or one leg tied behind him, because he's not anymore. He doesn't have to worry about facilities. He doesn't have to worry about these amenities that all these other programs have. And he's able to focus on, let me go get the best coordinators possible and be able to break out the checkbook, because that is what it takes to be competitive here. You need the best coordinators. You need the best facilities, especially when State College, Pennsylvania is just not the most attractive place to live for 4 years if you were a college student athlete. I hate to say it. I think State College, University Park is an awesome place. But when you're competing against Los Angeles and Gainesville, and yes, Columbus and Ann Arbor, State College does not compare when you look at the point of view from an 18 to 20-year-old student athlete. You have to look at it through their mind and where they're going to spend their next 4 years. Los Angeles and Gainesville and Austin, Texas are just more appealing naturally. Like I said, I don't like to say that as the Penn State podcast host. And then on top of that, if Ohio State has $10 more million to work with in NIL, yeah, you got to compete against that too. So all of those factors considering the fact that Penn State, someone said this, Penn State won 23 games these past 2 seasons with a mediocre, let me take this, and a mediocre offensive coordinator in 2023 and no wide receiver help for 2 seasons. And they made the national semifinal. They made the national semifinal. Moral victories don't matter to everybody, but they only lost by 3. And if one play goes differently for Penn State, they are playing in the national championship against Ohio State. That says a lot about where this program is. So when people say something's got to change, what do you want to change? What puts Penn State over the hump? Well, fire James Franklin. Okay, then you unravel everything. Because then it is open season. Everybody goes into the portal. Coaches will leave. Those assistant coaches matter. They will either follow James Franklin to his next destination or go to other programs. They might stay with the new head coach. And who do you get? Who do you get? Drop in the comments Urban Meyer, because that you are dead wrong if you say Urban Meyer. Go for it. Urban Meyer is going to fix what James Franklin seems to not be able to do this. Penn State has incrementally gotten better. They were here, now they're up here, and they continue. If we were seeing them regress, I'd agree with you that something does need to change. But Penn State was in the top 4. They actually made the college football semifinal. If these were the top 4 teams, this is no different from years past when they didn't make the top 4. This was that version of this because of the 12-team playoff. But they destroyed SMU. They destroyed Boise State. And they lost on a last-second field goal to the team that made the national title game. I don't know what you want to change that significantly makes them better. What they need to change is how competitive they are with NIL. They're doing everything else right. They need to be more competitive with NIL. There's a big difference between $12 million, allegedly, and $22 million, allegedly. Find a way to get wide receiver involved in the game and open quarterback 1 to real competition. Do people really want to get rid of Drew Allar? I understand he had a bad game. I criticized him. I've made my peace with it. But Drew Allar's also the reason they got to the national championship game. And I could continue to go for another 30 minutes to talk about all this, so I'm going to have to wrap it up here. But if you think that Drew Allar did not get Penn State to the national semifinal, you're wrong. Because the games against Minnesota, the game sealing drive where he led them downfield and helped take away 5 minutes off of the clock. Yes, it took a fake punt, but they could have easily another 3 and out and then had to punt the football again. Drew Allar led them on that drive. Drew Allar led a comeback drive against USC. They don't get to the college football playoff if he doesn't do what he does in those 2 games. Aside from the other fact, looked great against West Virginia. And I know that's not saying much, but he looked great in all those other games. I know. It hurts to not beat these types of teams. Oregon, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. But Penn State is not losing to them in the past like they were by double digits, by multiple scores, where you had no chance. Penn State is closer than ever, and they will be again in 2025 by retaining some of these key players. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. We went through a lot of different tangents, but it is good news that Zane Durant is back, and Dennis-Sutton should make the decision very soon, and we'll see what he decides, and we'll go live again when Dennis-Sutton makes that decision one way or another, NFL or not. Hopefully he comes back, and it looks like it's trending in that direction, but I would not be surprised if he does go off to the NFL in this cycle. If you're not already, if you're new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts, because we do this every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, but we talk about everything. Penn State football, Penn State basketball, Penn State wrestling. It is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.